Thank you all for joining me today. I know it is my honor to have you in this room, given that your keynote did such a fantastic job, and he's probably having some people join him there. But we have quite a few people in this room, so I'm very excited. So let's first begin with a quick intro of myself, and then I'm going to do an activity. Yeah, it's one of those type of presentations. So again, my name is Adam Shu. I was introduced, I'm a part of a team of coaches at JPMorgan Chase. I live in Tampa, Florida, and I have 6 children, one of which is here with me right now. She decided to come along and see what dear old dad does for a living, so very honored to have her. Yes, please, round of applause. This is Samantha. So Samantha gets to see what I do for a living every day. So, but yeah, I have a lot of letters behind my name. So much so it got really confusing. So I don't really include the letters in my LinkedIn or my profile anymore because there's just too many. So probably a good rule of thumb to have is when you have more letters behind your name than your actual names, kind of stop using the letters. But I will share with you. So just to give you an idea, I am a dyed-in-the-wool project manager from way back when. I've been very much involved in PMI back in 2004, 2006. I've held pretty much every position on the chapter's board in Tampa, served as the president, and I'm still emeritus with the board, right? So I still have deep connections with my chapter. And I've actually presented this for the local chapter that I'm with in Tampa Bay. And the feedback that I got was, this is a great presentation. You should see if you can go to other chapters as well. And the reason for that is, this presentation I put together because we have a lot of people in our community that started their careers off as project managers, right? And have been doing project management for a very long time. And now, because the environment has changed, all of a sudden we are no longer project managers, we're project scrum masters or whatever you want to call it, right? So the agile world has pretty much encroached into our lives in business. So I'm basically here to share with you my story to see if it's something that you can relate to. But before we do that, I'm going to be using this software called Polo EV. So I handed out some flyers. The flyer is 2 purposes, so I am multitasking on the flyer. I'll openly admit that. At the very bottom, you can scan the QR code to answer the question. However, I'm not going to use the poll to do this because I'd rather do it in a different way. There's going to be other questions I'm going to be using the poll for. But instead, I'm going to be asking everybody to please stand up. So this is a good way to get us started so that we actually have some activity at the beginning of the day. So this is what I'm going to be doing. This is called a sociogram. Has anybody ever participated in a sociogram before? Okay, a sociogram is basically a tool that we use in our classes that I teach to basically allow you to vote with your feet. Right? To basically tell me some information. I get to learn some very quick things about this entire audience. We have about 40 to 50 people in here. So I want to make sure my message is adapted to you, right? So I'm going to start with something very simple. And the way we're going to do this is, we're going to have 2 sides of the room, right? So one side of the room I'm going to designate as, if you're brand new to project management, just recently got your PMP, you would walk towards this side of the room. If you are a very seasoned expert project program manager, portfolio manager, you're over this side of the room, probably even leaving the room, right? So if you could do that real quick, organize yourself where you, and please push into chairs. Yeah, just walk to whatever you feel is best.
Is there a middle of the room?
You can leave your stuff on the table. You don't have to take your stuff. So good question over here is, what if I don't know? There's somewhere in between, right? So these are people just starting out, and these are people very seasoned experts. And if you're somewhere in the middle, that's okay as well. Okay? Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to start on this side of the room first. Just to get a sense of who we have in the room. So I just want to confirm, you folks are all standing here because brand new to the PMP world. Anybody just recently get their PMP? Question I always like to ask. Or studying for it? Studying for it, okay. So first of all, I took my PMP back in 2004, and I'm sure it's changed like 6 versions by now. So I don't know if I'm even qualified to be called PMP anymore, but I'll say this. It is one of those tests that is so hard, I never want to do it again, and this is why I still renew my certification every year, because it was such a hard test. I never want to lose my PMP, right? So if you get it, congratulations ahead of time, but it is something worth doing for your career. The value of the PMP is still being very much held at a high value in corporations. So anybody here just getting into the PM world from somewhere else, like BAs or, yep?
I was in sales.
You're in sales? And what else?
And then moved into project management.
Moved into project management.
IT engineering and architecture.
IT engineering, architecture, same, okay.
Sales.
Sales, okay. You guys?
Sales.
Sales, okay. So a lot of folks, so this is an interesting trend. I've never seen so many people from sales moving into project management. Usually it's the other functions like BAs or engineers or testers or whatnot, but this is interesting to see. This is maybe some information that's useful for us. So sales, thank you guys very much for sharing with us. I'm gonna go to the other side of the room. So, veteran PMs. So one thing I like to do here, the reason why I do this sociogram is, it gives me an idea of the people in the room, but how they actually think they are where they are. So I'm gonna ask you this question. Did you talk to anybody else before placing yourself there? Right? So this is kind of showing you a little bit of how we make certain assumptions. So I'm going to ask, how many people here, standing maybe along the wall, have been PMs for 30 years? Right? I don't care certified or not, but I've been in the industry of project management for about 30 years. So we have one gentleman, right? So 20 years. Okay, so you guys probably shift up a little bit. But again, I'm just showing you the different degrees. So, everybody here, I assume, have their PMPs, yes?
Yes.
Agree with me, one of the hardest tests you'll ever take in your life. And definitely appreciate it. And most of you have been doing project management or program management or portfolio. How many people have actually multiple certifications with PMI? Okay, what do you have, sir?
ACP and PMP.
ACP and PMP?
UMP.
PDA, okay, great. Every once in a while we get a few portfolio and program management. Okay, great, so this gives me an idea. And so I'm assuming here, folks in the room, probably a couple of years doing project management, like 2 or 3, maybe? 6? Okay, how about you? 10?
I took my PMP and passed in 2004 and let it lapse.
Yeah.
So I'm mostly management now, so
Yep. So you're the same boat as I am, back in 2004, and this is, as long as the company is willing to pay for my PMP, I was like, yeah, go ahead, please renew. But thank you very much for sharing. Okay, so that gives me an idea of the makeup of the room. Now, here's my next question. How many people are looking to now transition their careers from being a project manager to being more something aligned with Agile, right? So if you're that, align more towards Agile, maybe a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, you're here. But if you're firmly rooted and there's no reason for me to change. I'm a project management, you're over here. So kind of organize yourself accordingly. So this is based on your desire. Do you want to be aligned more with, hey, I want to be more in the Agile space versus I'm okay with being traditional PM, traditional way of doing things. Somewhere in the middle is okay too. Okay?
There's newbies as well.
Yeah, newbies too. Newbies is fine. So you could be a newbie and want to basically get into the Agile world as well. Okay?
If we don't know yet,
Somewhere in the middle, that's fine. That's okay.
Oh, in the middle is the
So this
January.
is interesting. So this is interesting. If anything, this visual should be something, they should be telling me something about what's happening in the market right now, right? So PMI has been around for a very long time, right? It's been around since back in the 70s when it first got created, some of the founders created.
50 years.
50 years. I'm sorry, I'm giving you a little too much credit, right? Teresa's keeping me honest. Thank you for joining me, Teresa. But see what's happening in the room. Right now, there's a lot of interest, maybe personally and maybe sometimes sports, right? So, how many people here woke up one day, showed up to their office and told, hey, you're a PM, I get it, but you've got to start doing this thing called Agile now. It's kind of mandated, like you have to start doing Scrum. Anybody here? Okay, so it is happening. People are finding themselves in the role of PM and then being asked to do this other thing, right? So then PMI started to come out with these other certifications that says, right, well, that's okay. We can also learn how to work with Agile at the same time. But if anything, this is useful information for you as well to find out, okay, what's happening in the market? There is actually a lot of, again, sometimes people call it noise. Sometimes people call it, hey, this is kind of progression of the industry. That's okay. That's fine. So, last question I'm going to ask you is, how many people are familiar with Kanban? Kanban is experts over here. Never heard the word Kanban today, and I'm here to find out what it is along that wall. So if you know Kanban, on that side of the wall.
I realize this is turning into a standardizer.
Thank you so much for doing that. And again, this is good information for me as the presenter of this session today. It gives me an idea that there are a lot of people that have experienced, maybe done some sort of Kanban. So you guys are along the wall. Do you guys already work with teams with Kanban already? You're coaching Kanban. Are you a Kanban? Are you certified Kanban? Camp 1. So awesome. You're where's the Kanban? All right, awesome.
Maybe in a different context.
Okay.
Certain black belt, so I'm familiar with it in terms of process management or inventory control, work in progress, reduce waste.
So yeah, he mentioned Six Sigma, all based in Lean, right? So Kanban comes from the Lean world, manufacturing. So we can certainly talk about this. So great to see that we have some experts in the room. And then again, we have some people that just recently, like what is Kanban? Is that like a dessert or, right? I get it. It's a meal, right? You get your nice Kanban and you eat it for lunch. Okay, so I'm gonna share with you some fundamentals of Kanban. So one thing I wanna make sure you realize, I can't teach you Kanban in 45 minutes today, right? It is impossible, but what I can do is share with you some very valuable information about Kanban. And by the way, you can take a seat now. Thank you very much for doing that. Thank you. So I'll let you get settled first. So that's actually the reason why I passed out the flyers. If anybody is interested in learning the fundamentals of Kanban, just the foundational, I do have a class tomorrow. You still can register for it. I do have a discount for people who are part of the chapter, so you save a little bit of money. But that's a full day class, so it's 8:30 from 8:30 to 5. I know it's kind of last minute you're hearing about it, but just in case you're free, it is a certified course. So you can just go to the website and then register. Yes, question?
Timing was tough, but are you going to have more of these?
For the certified training?
Right.
I could certainly work with Teresa to find opportunities to bring more of those classes here. Yes, absolutely. So it's just a drive down for Tampa.
So what do you say, like what day would be, it's tomorrow, right? And when are you doing?
Yeah, I can come again in the future, so you can plan better.
July or August? Yeah, well, he's very busy, he's on the road and on the beach. Well, maybe we could do that Palm Beach State College.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow we're doing it at FIU, right? So why can't we do that Palm Beach State College?
So I'll work with Teresa to see if we can make this more available, but it is a one-day class and you do get a certification out of it. So that's, yeah. Okay, so that was a little bit about me and a little bit about yourself. So thank you for doing that. That gives me some great information. So you can see this presentation I put together for you is a little bit of a timeline of how I started moving into the Agile world myself. And if it gives you some ideas, then great. I'm not prescribing that this is the way for everybody to do it. But what I do want to share with you is some of the things that you're doing are things that we teach in Kanban already. And you may not even know it already, right? So I know a lot of people that are working in their industry are struggling with how do I become a Scrum Master or coach, whatever, aside from just going to take my CSM training, right? Because you can get some information about that, but what are some of the practical ways of doing it? And not even that. We also have seen that a lot of companies are asking for Agile in their space, but are they really embracing it? That's the other challenge, and that's something I'm going to be talking about in my keynote today. They say one thing and then they're doing something else, right? So there's incongruence between what they're asking for and what they're actually expecting. They're saying, yeah, do Agile, but nothing's changed, right? They've just changed all the labels. So I'm just going to tell you my story and again, give you some insights and maybe there's some nuggets of wisdom here that you can take with you. All right, so started back in 97, so I'm going to go further back, back to the time when I first started my career. All right, so I'll share with you first of all, I am a University of Miami graduate, so thank you very much. I am a Miami boy, so I grew up here. That's how I kind of know Teresa. I've lived in Miami for a good majority of my life until I moved up to Tampa. But I did go to University of Miami for my MBA, and from there, I basically had an opportunity to start working for a very well-known Big Five consulting company, which is no longer, right? That term is a no-no. I probably would even get in trouble using it because they said, no more Anderson. We transformed into Accenture, right? So this is what I did coming out of my MBA program, and I did that for 5 years. I became a COBOL programmer. Anybody COBOL programmers here? Yeah!
No more.
So we are coming back. We are coming back in style. Because as much as people tell us, like, no, Java's gonna replace everything, guess what? Our world runs on COBOL. Your billing systems, your utilities, your infrastructure, everything is run on COBOL. And you can't just replace it with JavaScript and Java, shell code, right? COBOL is very powerful. So that's what I did for 5 years, and so I did that, and then basically, again, transformed to Accenture, and then got out of Accenture because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is back in 2003, 2004, when basically they said, you know what, our model for our consulting firm is to basically have a pyramid. We have a lot of people that are paid very well up top, and then we have a lot of doers down below. And our triangle has turned into basically a trapezoid or something. We have too many people at the top. So guess what? You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Shake. So me and a good portion of my colleagues were out looking for a job. So that's my story. And at the time I was a programmer. So I was like, all right, so what am I going to get into now? Right? So the next logical thing for me to do was to basically look at good time to reinvent myself, right? So programming was great. I loved it, but at the same time, I was looking to get married. I was looking to buy a house. I needed to make more money. And I looked around and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of these folks called project managers that are popping up that used to be programmers, right? And they're making more money than I am. So that's what I started looking at. So again, told you I just got married, right? Bought a house, and started working for a local company in Tampa, a small one, not as big, definitely not as big as Accenture. And they gave me the opportunity to go get my PMP. And I am forever grateful for that company. They actually said, you know what, we need to get caught up a little bit ourselves. We're kind of a little bit of a chaotic shop. Tell you what, we'll send you off to Rita Mulcahy's training boot camp. Anybody still here who got certified through Rita Mulcahy? one of the best training programs ever. Still talk about her. So I went and got my PMP, and they said, do that and come back and teach us how to follow the Kanban, right? It's like, sure, I'll do that. So I did that, and not only did I do that, I really got involved, right? Because part of the allure with becoming a PMP is, hey, there's this whole community that you could tap into, PMI Global, right? So I was like, yeah, I might as well jump headfirst into it. I got very involved with my chapter, right, at Tampa Bay. Any opportunity I had, I volunteered, started learning what the community was about. It was really exciting times, right? So this is back in 2002, 2003. Again, lost my job, but again, found my new career becoming a PM, and you can see, this is published way back when. You can see they were showing like, look, this is how much money you can get much more money, and you can actually gain a lot of influence. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. So I was like, great, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to become a PM. So these were the glory days of being a PM, right, for me. Back in 2006, project management was coming, right? And anybody that's working in IT or any delivery shop, the first thing they did was ask, are you PMP certified, right? Not only that, being on the other side of the fence, whenever we recruited, the first thing you do is you filter for PMP, right? So I'm sure you know that. That's one of the main reasons why the PMP certification was so valuable. Companies knew the value of having folks go through the ringer, basically, studying the entire Kanban, really learning the methodology of how to manage large, complex, multiple projects using this method called the Kanban, right? So it was very popular. So much so, I was able to attain a new job because of it. I did such a great job in my small company, and again, they didn't have any hard feelings because before I left, I actually helped them establish a project management office, right? So they started following the process. They followed the Kanban, and I found myself a great opportunity. So JP Morgan Chase brought me in about 2006, and at that time, they were expanding their PM base, right? So most folks that I knew joining the company back in 2006 in Tampa were PMPs, right? Not only that, I was a diehard PM, right? Let me see if I can show. No, I'm just kidding. But this is pretty much how committed I was, right? I was willing to get the tattoo. Like, I was very proud of being a PM in this organization that highly valued delivery, software delivery, using this methodology of using the project management method, right? So I was like, great. So I was pretty much known as Mr. PMI on my campus, right? So anytime anybody wanted to get a PMP certification, all the executives knew, go send them to Adam. Hey, Adam, can you do a lunch and learn about how to get your PMP, right? Okay, can you start getting people involved in the PMI community? Can we sponsor events, right? So it was like I said, these were the glory days of PMI and PMP, and I was very proud to be, and I still am very proud to be a PM, right? These are my roots. However, before I get to however, this was kind of a very convincing graph, right? This was produced by somebody who started looking at the data of the growth of the market of PMs, the number of people who were going out and getting certification. And you know it's not cheap, right? And I'm not just talking about the certification itself. Think about how much time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears went into getting your certification, right? It's a lot of commitment. Some people I know it took them 2 years, right? Because again, there's a lot of multitasking, right? They got to try to balance family and try to get the certification at the same time. I was lucky enough that my company said, you know what, take a whole month off, go get your PMP, get certified. I was the lucky one. A lot of people, it took them a year or two, right? So it all depends on your context. So, what did it mean being a PM? It means that I had some very useful tools in my tool belt, right? I was really good at creating schedules and Gantt charts, right? I'm sure everybody here has, this is part of your skill set and domain. You can use the Microsoft project tool like nobody's business. You know how to tweak it so that you can actually show what you need to do to actually make a project successful. The other thing that I was really good at, RAG reports, right? Red, amber, green reports. And this is something that was expected of me in the company that I work for. And this is how we communicated risk, how we communicated progress. Because guess what, most of the times, executives don't want to look at this, right? We know this. This is way too much information. They want us to distill it into this and show them, well, what does that mean, right? So I got really good at creating these executive status reports that use red, amber, green. The other thing I got really good at, part of my job as being a PM, was scheduling resources, right? Scheduling headcount over an entire period of a year, right? Where are we going to place people? How much are they going to cost, right? And what multiple projects they're going to have to divvy their time against, right? So these are all things that I've done, and you probably have done as well, probably are really good at too. And another thing that I was really good at was scheduling releases, right? So I was a release manager for quite some time. I needed to coordinate people supporting multiple projects across different portfolios so that we could all hit our date at a very specific time, right? So this is portfolio management, program portfolio management, right? So I became a master of the arts of doing this, right? So how many people here feel pretty confident about their skill sets doing this type of stuff, right? I see a couple hands, that's great. So this is what it took to become a very successful PM. So, I'm going to share with you the best kept secrets of how to be the best PM. Because remember, the company that I've worked for hired a lot of PMs. Now, probably like you, my company rewarded people based on merit, right? It's incentive based. How are you going to distinguish yourself as a better PM than this gentleman sitting right here, who also has a PMP and has been doing it for 10 years now? How are you going to distinguish yourself, right? So I had a little bit of insight, and I said, you know what? These are the type of projects that will distinguish me among all of my peers. So these are the best kept secrets of being a good PM. First of all, has to be fully funded, right? Has to have a lot of money. So there's a lot of projects out there that you can choose to work on. Sometimes you have no choice. But sometimes you may have some influence about, hey, I would really like to work on this project. So the ones that have money are always the first ones I go for. The next one, highest risk. So you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, highest risk? Yeah, highest risk. Why? Because it has all of the time and attention from the executives, right? It is so important. That's why it's been rated the highest risk project. And guess what? We need a top PM to stay on top of that. And guess what? Most of my peers were like, no, I'm not doing that. You can take it. That's okay, right? But I ran towards that. I was like, you know what? If it's going to get time and attention with my executive, I want that project. Not only that, I love it if it's a regulatory project. That project has to be delivered. We can't move the date. The Federal Reserve government is going to come down and fine us or shut us down or whatever. Great. I want that one. Highest risk regulatory project, well funded. You see where I'm going here, right? I'm gaming the system. Because there's a lot of projects out there, and all of you who are nodding your head know, not all projects are equal, right? We have discretionary projects. Now, these are things that we need to do for the client, but there's this regulatory project, and can we spare that? Can maybe they work half-time? No such thing as half-time. I want a fully dedicated team. They don't get to work on anything else. They're my team. Before you get to talk to them, you have to come through me, right? I am the gatekeeper of this team, right? Right? So you see where I'm going here. I am gaming the system. And guess what? This got me very well recognized in my environment, right? Because a lot of people are like, hey, that's a little too intense for me. I don't want to do this. I'd rather have the discretionary, we'll deliver it, the date will slip a little bit, whatever. No, I want this. And guess what? Most of the time, most of the time, all of the time I did this, I was successful. And the reason for that is I had all the time and attention of the executives, right? And they funded it well. They're like, look, just throw money at it. We can't afford to miss this date. It has to be done, right? So guess what? Pull those other people off those discretionary projects. Have them help us on this project, right? So that's what I did. So that's the biggest secret. So this was my life for quite some time. I would like to now find out from you, what are your criteria of success for, what do you need for project success? So if you scanned your QR code, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the slide, and then we're gonna see what you're actually responding. So let's take a look. Let's see what you guys are saying. What do you need for project success? What do you need for project success? And again, if the QR code doesn't scan, you could always enter it manually into your cell phones, and it should pull up. So I'll give you a moment. I know some of you have to type. All right, so we have value add, strong, focus team, great. Stakeholder engagement. Executive sponsorship, yeah, I mentioned that. Executive buy-in. Communication. Any other good resources? Yeah. People who are skilled, able to do the right things for the project, right? The right applicable resources. Anything else? Positive change management environment. Ooh, that's a big one. Right? What we're talking about here is sometimes these projects are pretty big in the way that they're executed, and how are we going to do that while adapting to our environmental change, right? Okay, reasonable budget, right? You gotta have a budget that's actually committed. So trust communications, right? These are all. So I'm glad to see all of these responses. So thank you very much. And if you want to keep adding to it, please feel free to do so. By the way, I will mention towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to capture all of this and update my slides, and then give it back to the chapter so they can share it back with you, so you can have this information for yourself. Okay? So thank you very much for doing that. You can keep responding to it if you want, but I'm going to go back to my presentation. So, again, there's a lot of things you're going to need for project success. So again, I shared with you my approach on which project I chose to associate myself with, but I am going to also share with you the secrets of my success and how did I make my project successful, right? How did I get to the end goal, the finish line successfully? So first, for every project that I managed, I painstakingly made sure that I created something that looked like that. I can't show you the ones that I actually created, but they look very similar to that. A dashboard, right? And sometimes if I had the tools to create that on SharePoint, I did it, right? I didn't rely on anybody else. I spent the time and effort to actually create that for them. But I'll tell you this, most of the time what happened was me creating a very visual representation on the progress, the risks, the issues, the status, the timelines, everything on a 11 by 17 piece of paper that I handed out every single week to every team member on my project, right? So dashboard, great, more real time, but I still did the static one and I handed it out. And people expected it, right? Every Monday I would walk around and start handing out the updated visual of what's going on, right? So that was something I did. I wanted to make sure people knew what was going on with the project that they're working on, right? Because a lot of times, you heard it in the keynote, there's a lot of things going on. And I don't know what Bob is doing. I'm just focusing on this piece of code that I need to get done by the end of this date, so then I can give it to Bob so they can test it, right? So I needed a way to kind of show them what's going on in the rest of the project or the program and everything else that was impacting them. The next thing I did was, again, I'm very protective of the people that work for me. So I made sure, do not disturb. You are not allowed to talk to anybody in my team. You can't pull them away to another meeting if it's not associated to my project. And that happens a lot, right? In organizations, we have a lot of dotted lines. We have a lot of responsibilities sometimes that aren't part of the project. And as much as you say, we're going to ring fence this team, you still have other things that pull people away, lunch and learns or whatever. It's like, nope, you have to get it through me, right? So that's what I did. I blocked and tackled for my team. The other thing I did was I basically gave them an idea of where things were. And again, this I had to actually show them through using Microsoft Project Schedule, right? I had to show them, here's every time we put in new information, here's what's happening, right? I actually needed to show them the work that was being done and what it contributes to the end goal, right? Yes, I gave them a dashboard, but they also needed to know the details of it, right? They needed to know that as soon as they completed or delayed any task in the schedule, it had an impact to the actual end game, right? So I did that, and I sat down with them and actually explained what was happening. So I did that on a regular basis. The other thing I did also was I made it very clear who was doing what, right? Anybody familiar with that RACI? What does that stand for? Yeah, you guys all know it. Responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed, right? There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of players when it comes to large projects and programs. So a lot of people sometimes get confused and they're like, well, that's not my responsibility. Well, I'm responsible, but I'm not accountable for it, right? How do you know, right? So we needed to communicate the policies very clearly to the people that are doing the work, right? That way we didn't have any misunderstandings that basically derail the entire project later on. So, just like any good PM, right, part of the PMBOK, at the end of every project, we do what's called a lessons learned. And the reason why we do that is we don't want to relive the mistakes that we lived before, right? If there was something that happened to us that was terrible and nearly cost us the entire project, we want to make sure we share that with, our team as well as other teams that might be doing this in the future as well, right? So lessons learned were helpful, and it helped us improve. It helped us avoid pitfalls and risks that didn't need to, so sometimes we can manage out the risks. That's great. And finally, we did some things that were experiments, right? So we were saying, you know what, we're doing some great stuff here, but is there any way to make this a little bit better, right? Yeah, we can manually test all of this code all the time, but is there a way we can maybe automate some of this, right? So that we're not just constantly doing the same things over and over again. Maybe save ourselves a little bit of time. So maybe can we experiment with trying to do a little bit of automating our test cases, right? So I think most people did this, right? So quick question here, quick checkpoint. Is this anything outside of the box of the PM world that I'm describing here? If anybody walked into this door right now, they would be thinking, I'm teaching you the PMBOK. One day, right? So guess what? All of these skills that I did, and you probably do as well, are things you already have in your tool bag that actually can help you start moving towards the Agile world. And let me explain that. So that was back in 2006. So this is when it happened to me. Now remember, the manifesto has been around for a long time, much earlier than 2013 when I started getting involved. Anybody know when the Agile Manifesto was written? 2001, right? Snowbird, Utah, bunch of guys who were expert engineers decided to get together and say, hey, we're running into a lot of the same challenges trying to help our clients be successful, and we're all coders. Can we maybe put together something that would actually help them and actually share some common values and principles that we could share with the rest of the world that actually will help them out too? So they came out with this thing called the Agile Manifesto, right? And basically what they're saying is, there's a lot of things that we do, and we have to make choices, right? And I'll just boil it down to this. These things over here, we value more than these things over here, right? We value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So the key word here is in the manifesto that a lot of people tend to change the word or almost ignore is the word over. You see the four things that they describe here: individuals' interactions over processing tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following plans. A lot of people read that as instead of. right? So this is why Agile's gotten a bad rap. Oh, you're Agile people. You don't do any planning. You don't do any tool. You don't do any documentation. You don't do, right? So you've heard this before, right? The word is over. You still have to do everything on the right-hand side. They're just saying, when presented with an opportunity, value this more, because by valuing this more, it actually gets you to the end goal of creating a relationship with the people you're actually trying to help, right? So that's one of the misunderstandings of the manifesto. But that's part of what I teach. But again, they're saying is value both sides, but value left more. And again, started getting exposed to Scrum, right? So I had a wonderful opportunity working where I worked. I had some mentors who actually helped me really understand this. So much so, because of where I worked, they brought in some of the field experts, right? So I learned about Scrum and Agile from people who learned it from some of the originators of Agile. So the guy that I would say is probably most influential in the Agile community that was basically had a big effect where I worked was Craig Larman. Anybody know who Craig Larman is? If not, that's okay. He basically created what's known as LESS, right? LESS. If you're ever wanting to find out about it, you can go to less.works. You can find out everything you need to know about LESS. He basically gives it away for free. But LESS is a scaling framework for Scrum. So much so, Craig is what some people will call a purist, right? He basically says, listen, if you're going to start doing Scrum, why are you scaling? So what happens whenever you scale something? And it could be for any context. I shared with you, I have 6 kids, right? How many people here have kids? Anybody here have 6 kids? Do you think my life is a little bit different than yours? I scaled my situation, right? If you have one, I get this all the time. People ask me and my wife, how do you guys, I go crazy with just my 1, 2 kids. How do you guys do it with 6? First of all, they're all wonderful. Like Samantha, I say this and she thinks I'm kidding, but they are wonderful kids, right? They do listen and now we have our crazy moments, but I'm dealing with a scaled situation, and that's what Craig is saying. Hey, listen, you haven't even mastered this concept called Scrum yet. And the first thing you're doing coming out of the gate is, let's have 20 teams. That's not Scrum anymore. That's a different animal, right? That's scaled whatever. So this is where I kind of cut my teeth on learning about Scrum and scaling frameworks. And again, I was very fortunate. So again, the next thing I started doing was, well, kind of following the model of my PM experience, what certification should I go out and get, right? Because now in the market, there's tons of them. I get this question all the time from my PM friends. Hey, so which one should I get? At the end of the day, what I'll tell you is, it doesn't matter which one you get. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one you get, as long as the one you get serves the purpose of giving you what you need to be able to be successful, right? Because at the end of the day, these certificates are meant to show that you have some sort of competence in understanding what Scrum or scaled Scrum is, and how are you going to effectively help your organization leverage it to become better, right? So, for me, I went out and got my CSM. Well, no, before that, the first one I got, because again, I'm a diehard PMI guy, I went out and got my PMI ACP. That's the first one I got. And then I later went out and got my CSM and CSPO. But this is where it started for me, right? So I needed to kind of show that, hey, I could do this too, right? And then honestly, compared to the Kanban, it's an open book test. You can't fail it, right? It's 2 days. You go to training, you come out as a CSM. Not even in the same ballpark as a PMP, right? But at the same time, I was trying not to look down on this process. I was still saying, look, there's more to learn. So what I did for myself is I went out and bought all the books I can on, agile development, coaching, and everything else. You have to invest in yourself to actually find out what it's all about. Getting a certification is maybe just the first step in getting into this world. So, what I would like to find out from you is, in your organization, what is it that you're using or being asked to do, right? So if you can answer that, switch over to the poll. And let's see if you can start answering this question. What is your organization using right now in terms of delivery?
Are you asking for the tool?
No, just what you know. So you could be still pure waterfall, right? Traditional project management. You can be pure Scrum.
Oh, we have to answer.
Yeah, you can answer on your phone. So sorry, Teresa, I don't know if you came in when we.
No, but I wrote one.
Okay. Oh, you did. Good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should have changed on you. You can now select multiple. But I'll share with you this, and you can answer if you want. But I've rarely seen these. I've probably seen it once in my 6 years of coaching teams on Agile, where there's because Scrum says you have one team, one product owner, one backlog, and one Scrum Master. That's it. Once you break that seal, you're no longer Scrum. Right? So if you have that, wonderful, protected. That's a very rare thing to have. And usually that's in a very small environment. But most of the time it's this. This is kind of what I expected. This is actually what happened when I asked this question at the other chapter, right? This is predominant. Right now we have a lot of hybrid. So what I can tell you about a little bit of everything, it's very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating because guess what? The people at the top, they're very used to this for, how long have we been doing this? Forever, right? And now they're being told sometimes, again, at the top of the house, or sometimes they themselves, maybe they came back from some conference, read it in some journals that, oh, we need to start doing this now, right? Hey, let's get this happening. So when we live in this space, it confuses and creates a lot of stress for the people who are doing the work, right? Not just that, for the people who are trying to help, the people in this room who are being asked, hey, you need to still deliver on the deadline, but now you need to do it this way, right? You need to start telling people, hey, you're no longer a VA or a tester or a coder, you're a team now. And by the way, we're going to change your title too. You're no longer a project, you're a Scrum Master, right? Just overnight, just boom, like we're fairy princesses. Boom, you're a Scrum Master. That creates a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Stress, and it's a big R.
Resistance.
Risk, yes.
Resistance.
Right? Because you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with people who have known how to do things very well. I'm a big proponent of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? We follow a process and it's very, but unfortunately, the whole market and people are telling them, hey, you're doing things the old way. You need to start getting caught up, right? I don't know if I'm necessarily a believer in that. If things are working well and you're meeting clients' expectations, why are you changing just because everybody else is telling you you need to do this now? This is creating a lot of havoc, right? A lot of stress for people. So, thank you for sharing that. And again, this gives me an idea of what's happening in the world here. Again, I asked this question of knowledge Kanban. We did this cystogram. You don't have to answer this question. But let's get into the Kanban years. So, when I started looking into, again, I learned about Scrum, I learned about scaling Scrum and a lot of principles of Agile through my own efforts, but I also, at one point, got asked this question. Right? You know about Kanban. So, maybe very similar to some of you standing near the wall. It was like, oh, it's a very good dessert. I don't know. Right? So, what I found out was, oh, I better start learning about this thing because it gets lumped into the whole Agile world too, right? It's a bunch of practices and values that we use to actually help the world we work in. So I was like, you know what? I better go out and read the book, right? So there's a guy out there that wrote the book, David J. Anderson, published back in 2004, wrote the book called Kanban, Successful Evolutionary Change for Your Technology Business. Read it cover to cover, and even created a little class. I started teaching people on how to leverage Kanban, right? So we did some simulations with, creating pizzas and creating paper airplanes to kind of do that. And it was good up to a point, And some people started doing it, and then it started fading out. Like, well, we tried it didn't work. So I was like, what's going on here, right? I read the book, I created a class, it should be working, right? So I was like, all right, if I'm really gonna learn about how to do this, I really need to go to the source, right? So that's when I went and got my certification in being able to teach and coach Kanban. I went to Lee Kanban University. It's the world authority on Kanban. David J. Anderson created. I learned from them, right, directly. And what I learned was some very important things. One of which is, in the agile world today, we have a lot of what we call coaches, right? We have a lot of people that are now telling people, hey, I'm a scrum master, I'm a coach, I'm an agile coach. But what's happening is, you take those coaches away, everything falls apart. Everything is completely dependent on this coach making it happen, that without them, there's nothing happening, right? Has anybody seen that happen? Like there's some change initiative, like, oh, we're gonna transform to being agile teams and bring in a bunch of coaches, and then the coaches start getting people to start doing it, and then after a while the coaches started stepping back, and then everything starts falling apart, right? This is a big concept, and by the way, I do want to credit my friend Patrick Stayer, who came up with this image. This is actually what's happening in the agile world right now, right? There's a lot of focus about, just practices and principles, right? But they're missing the big picture. Well, what's happening is they're looking for solutions only from these coaches. They've become these crutches, if you will, right? And without an expert coach, we're not going to be able to do agile, right? And that's kind of missing the point. We're looking at a solution from just a person who has some expert knowledge about the frameworks. Instead, we should be looking at the work itself and how are we going to make the work better to actually sustain, regardless if there's a coach or not, right? So we're missing part of the picture here. So what Kanban actually covers are these 6 practices. So everything you really need to know about Kanban is here. There are 6 practices in Kanban that if applied to your work, it will get better. So the 6 are visualizing your work, limiting work in progress. So that keynote that you heard today, it was talking about limiting the work in progress. Stop task switching or context switching. The more you do that, the worse your performance is going to get. Manage your flow of work, right? So again, we need to think about the work as not just endpoints. The work's going to keep coming at us regardless. We could finish this project, another one's going to come on right after that. How are we going to manage the flow of work? And not just for ourselves, for all the people that are doing the work. Making policies explicit. Because we're playing the rules of the game, right? And how are we gonna do this? Everybody has different expectations. When I say the word sprint, do you have the same definition in mind? When I say story points, when I say velocity, do you have the same definition? Probably not. So rather than making people guess, how about us making it clear what we mean, right? Implement feedback loops. Making sure that every chance you get, you implement feedback loops so that you can actually do something to make it better. The sooner the better. Real-time feedback, that's most agile. Improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally using the scientific method, right? So come up with a hypothesis. If we change this, I'm thinking this will happen, and let's test it out. Just like an experiment, just like you learned in high school, how to do a hypothesis. Do it, what's the result? And if it's good, keep doing that. If it's bad, stop doing it, right? So these are the 6 general practices of Kanban that if you follow, you will make work better. And guess what? It doesn't matter if you are agile or not. You can apply this to waterfall. You can apply this to waterfall. So this is one of the biggest misconceptions people have. Oh, I'm gonna switch from waterfall to Kanban. I'm gonna switch from Scrum to Kanban. These are things that you could apply to any situation. So a lot of times people ask me, what is Kanban? A lot of times I tell them it's an improvement method. So you want a better family life? Kanbanize it. Do these 6 things in your family life. Visualize the pain. Like we have too many sporting activities. We're running around crazy. Let's look at it. What are we doing? Look at our schedule. Right. So that's what we're talking about. So guess what? I shared with you these six things that I did. Guess what? These are the 6 practices I didn't know I was doing. I was visualizing the work that the team was doing all the time. I wanted them to have a visceral reaction to, this is what's happening right now on this project. So I made it very clear. Here's every week, here's another sheet of paper. Throw that one away. I know, I'm killing the color printer. It doesn't matter. I need you to know what's going on. Limit width. Stop bothering. Hey, there's too many things going on. You need to focus, right? So I limited the width for my team, right? Manage flow. I was trying to let them see what's happening when there isn't flow in the work, right? When they start focusing on other issues or other work, the flow stops, right? So how are we going to manage it? What are the choices we're going to make with it? Make policies explicit. What are the rules of the game that we're playing here, right? If we're going to win this game, we all need to be playing by the same rule book. So make those policies explicit. Lessons learned, implement feedback loops, right? And again, we don't necessarily have to wait till the end of the project. Many times I didn't wait. Every time we had a weekly call, I was like, hey, did anybody learn anything about this project that we shouldn't be doing the next week? Yeah, let's do it right away. And then we collected those and reviewed them again at the end of the project. And finally, the last practice was improve incrementally and evolve experimentally, right? Are there little things we can start doing right now? Can we try this to make it better? So guess what, folks? I know a lot of you are like, hey, how am I going to get myself into the agile world? Little did you know you were already doing a lot of these things, right? But it's just in a different context. So one last thing I'll share with you, and then I'm going to end it. This is the most important thing I want to share with you, and if you come to my class, I'm going to focus a lot about this. But this is the first thing you need to do before you start any of the 6 practices in Kanban. Because what Kanban, the Kanban method is based on are these 3 key principles. Really what it's talking about is the work that you're doing is being done by human beings. And if you want to keep encountering resistance, then keep doing it the way you're doing it. But if you want people to respect the change, you need to do these things first before you implement any of the practices. So again, a lot of learning from Lean Kanban, and again, that's the end of mine. If you want to learn more about it, come to my class tomorrow. You can still register. I would love to have you and get you guys certified. Thank you very much. What's up?